Okay, hello, and thanks everybody for coming to the last lecture in this school year, the 8th year. We've done these free non-credit lectures at the university, and tonight is a topic, or today, that I'm very familiar with, which is the history of Hempology 101, which is a very decorated organization, let's just say. And so there's a lot to talk about. Certainly this is the 8th year, so we've done like lots of other videos of our history and stuff. So today what I was thinking to do is to do some talking about the really old history, just getting started. And then talking about this past year, because really the last year of Hempology has been historical on many levels. It's been by far the most exceptional year in my work with this group, and I could spend a whole hour just kind of highlighting everything that we've done just this past year. However, I do want to tell some older stories and give people a context, I guess, of that. And so at the end I'll certainly give an overview of the year, but I'm going to start kind of at the beginnings, of which I wasn't even involved myself, though Dana Larson was. Many know Dana for his current campaign with Sensible BC, his work with Vancouver Seed Bank, setting up the Vancouver Medical Cannabis Dispensary Society, and before that working as the editor of Cannabis Culture magazine, which is actually how I met him back in 1995. But Dana even started Hemp 101, not Hempology, but just Hemp 101 at SFU. He had a one-day conference there with, among other speakers, criminologist Neil Boyd from SFU, who's still currently teaching and an outspoken opponent of the war on drugs. And so, in 1993 they had this one-off convention. They didn't really have a club established. There was a sort of drug policy club that I think they worked with, but that was it until Mark Emery moved into town and started up his Hemp BC, and his staff, having heard of this old event, thought that Hempology was a good name to use for a group that would essentially educate towards legalization, and to do so in a wide variety of ways, starting from the kind of street activism that was very just prolific at the time, and also working towards higher education, you could say. So Dana Rosiak started to have weekly Tuesday night meetings at 7 o'clock at her apartment, or kind of room that she rented across the street from where Hemp BC was. It was actually in the building that burnt down where Bonk Brothers was, so the building's no longer there, unfortunately. But the room was a perfect venue for people to gather and discuss what was happening in the industry in general, what was happening sort of in our own personal lives, and what we were doing with cannabis, and discuss potential actions that could be taken by the group. The original Hempology meetings were really dynamic, even though they were hosted by Dana. It really was this group think, more than what Hempology has become now, kind of under my leadership. But it was a really interesting scene to go to, and so that started in November of '94. I had just been left Ontario and finished school and traveled out here. I arrived in Vancouver actually the same month that Hempology started, and it only took a couple months before I heard through a friend about the meetings and attended one in January of '95. immediately it appealed to me. I was writing books and wanted to be an educator to help make the world a better place. So teaching about cannabis seemed very appropriate. Also, the history of hemp wasn't known to me, and when I traveled out here, again, I was writing books, having graduated. I went to the Clayoquot Sound and saw the clear cut there, and was appalled at what the devastation in the forest. I describe it as taking a paint a paint scraper to the mountainside is what it looked like. It was devastating, and I didn't feel I wanted to contribute to that. And when I learned about the alternatives that hemp presented, and that it was made illegal primarily, at least to begin with, because of paper production, it occurred to me that my family could be growing the hemp that my books were printed on, and that also Hempology needed a textbook to teach the history of this plant and about its uses and help empower people in ways that would help bring it back to its full fruition. So that was when I decided to create the Hempology 101 textbook and move from Vancouver to Victoria and start up another chapter. It seemed Hempology was going just fine there. It was time to branch out. And so I moved here in September 1995. One of the first things I did was get a club going here at the university and started to have just information, because we didn't have 420s. I don't even think I'd heard of a 420. Or wait, no, we were having weekly 420s downtown. I shouldn't say that. Ian Hunter was organizing them. So but it was a very new thing, and I didn't want Hempology to be about just smoking pot. I wanted it to be educational as well as fun. And so I stayed away from having 420s for the first couple of years. Then they started up, I guess it was 14 years ago, we started having weekly 420s here. And at first they were very small. It wasn't much bigger than this most weeks, just a small group smoking pot, hanging out. It didn't look any different till the group got big enough that I would stand in the center and then start addressing the group and talking in that way. And so that's when it became very obvious, when the numbers started to get over 20, that there was actually an event happening, and it wasn't just a bunch of friends smoking pot at the end of the afternoon. And so the administration here didn't appreciate that, so they organized to send undercover cops to a 420 who pretended to be students, who took a toke off of a joint that I passed around and kept that as evidence, and arrested me later in the parking lot and charged me with trafficking and tried to ban me from the campus. Or they did until the end of my trial, which was several years later. The reason that the 420s in the club kept going, though, was because of the mass participation from the students who came out in droves compared to the smaller groups that were happening when I was running it. And then Gail Quinn came along and really improved the organization of the 420s and the club, and it became a thriving organization here, one of the largest on campus. By the time I was allowed back in early 2005, I was convicted eventually of trafficking and paid a $500 fine for doing that, but was allowed back on campus. And was, I think, the fall after that that we started up these free lecture series. And
how much was the fine?
$500.
Oh.
Too bad you couldn't make it 420.
Expensive 420. Yeah. What can you do? And so, the club here has been rocking ever since. At the same time, back in '95, when I first moved here, I started to have weekly Wednesday night meetings. I would come from Vancouver on Tuesday nights, where I would sit in and listen to what was happening in the industry, what was new, and etc. And then come to Victoria for Wednesday with all this fresh news from Vancouver and pamphlets and whatever else I was able to collect. And so that worked really well for the most part until Vancouver actually stopped having their meetings for various reasons. It fell apart due to lack of leadership, I would suggest. But either way, we were left standing on our own after a time. But in the early days, I had some grand plans for Hempology. I certainly had a dream of a textbook, which really only took a couple of years by Oh, yeah, by 96, I had the first edition of the Hempology 101 textbook out, which looked a lot like this. The binding was all done by hand, made 100% out of hemp. With, I think it's, the paper in the middle though is like 40% flax and 20% cotton, 40% hemp. The covers are 100% hemp. I say look kind of like this. This was the third edition. The binding and the first editions weren't quite as well done, but I bound them by hand for the most part myself by the end, and I'm very proud to say it's one of the very few books made on hemp, about hemp. And so we just printed 100 of each of the first issues. In fact, my first plan with these was to go and travel across the country and sell these books and make them as I traveled from town to town. And in preparing for this today, I actually found the poster that we had made. And this is before I started up the Cannabis Buyers Club. I planned upon touring across Canada, making the Hempology 101 book. And when I ran out of the book, I was going to take whatever money I could and photocopy a whole bunch more, get holes punched in the side, and then sell more books until I got to the next town on donations and stuff. But yeah, looking at this now, I planned on flying, I guess, back to where I was born and raised in Ontario, in Waterloo Park. I was going to have the first rally, and then I was actually going to go all the way out to the East Coast, and then back through Ontario, all the way out to here on Vancouver Island. And I don't know exactly how many dates are on this old poster. Again, I made this poster in 95, yeah, when I was planning this whole future of Hempology. The idea was to have clubs across Canada and activist networks. And when I first got into this, it was like, let's go across the country, get Hempology happening everywhere. And so, yeah, it was kind of neat finding this old poster. When I first moved here in 95, I just bought a van, so I was living in a van. I planned on touring across Canada in my van, just, like I say, photocopying books and networking. Long before the days of Facebook, it would have been a very difficult, onerous journey. I'm so glad this didn't happen, because I'm sure my van would have broke down somewhere north of Thunder Bay, and it would have been broke and just ruined on many levels. Crawled home to my mommy and started over somewhere. So I'm really glad that I didn't take this tour and got diverted by the Cannabis Buyers Club. I'm not going to tell the story of the Buyers Club now, but when I got in my van and started the meetings in September 95, I began meeting sick people. That was an important issue at the time. It was becoming known in places like California, where dispensaries were opening up, that it was really good for people with AIDS in particular, and just in general good for pain relief. Obviously, everybody's known that for a long time. So that was a big issue in 95, and I started up the Buyers Club, within months of Hempology getting going, that's for sure. Actually, it sort of started on International Medical Marijuana Day, because back then in the States they celebrated that on the 15th of November. So we decided to do the same, and I spoke at the Victoria City Council, and we didn't get proclamations quite yet, but I've made an annual address to the Victoria City Council about medical marijuana since 1995. And I sort of remember the first one, we were swearing some kind of oath to help people with medical marijuana, and it really struck me that I was the one collecting signatures on this kind of people that were swearing an oath to help people that were, and I thought, well, what's the good of that? They just need the fucking medicine. And so I just, so it was shortly after that it occurred to me that I needed to actually take it to that next step, instead of waiting for the government to figure it out. We just needed to do it and then present our case in front of the courts. And so it was January 96 that I got a pager and a pamphlet with the knowledge that I was going to get busted any number of times. In fact, that was sort of the point, was to get arrested under circumstances that would be very defensible in the court of law. And with the mandate that we chose and the way we've gone, I would say we've done an exceptional job in that. The Buyers Club is somewhat a separate story from today. So aside from the launch of it when I lived in my van, I'm not going to get into too much. That's a separate YouTube video. But the two certainly do overlap and are intertwined to this day on different levels. And so, so we had the weekly downtown meetings going on, and I got arrested up here at UVic. I also got arrested at International Medical Marijuana Day in 2000. The year after, I had a successful cookie giveaway. I gave out 101 pot cookies at the downtown library with a uniformed police officer standing there watching, TV cameras and stuff, taking pictures. I got on the front page of the Times Columnist. The police in the news that year, again, this is 1999, said when THC is cooked, it can't be analyzed and we can't test it. So that's why we didn't bust them. Just bogus bullshit. They couldn't be used against them the next year when they came and arrested me. I thought after that I could give away as many cookies as I wanted, so I showed up with 420, and apparently that's not legal yet. But again, when I came up with the idea of giving cookies away, it was with the idea, what a perfect situation to get arrested doing, right? Giving out cookies, what a harmless kind of law to break, it seemed to me. And so it worked exceptionally well, because I got arrested the same week, November 2000, here and downtown, and it only made my work more popular. And so at that point I actually had to start hiring staff for the Buyers Club, because it was getting reported in the media that I was doing this Hempology stuff, getting busted, giving out cookies and things, but I was selling medical marijuana with this other group, and that seemed okay. So, we had like 2 new members a day coming into the Buyers Club from that point. So we had to get staff just to kind of look after that, which was a good thing, ultimately speaking. And so, so one of the things that I started to do as well was we needed a newsletter, right? It was, again, the days before the internet, it was hard to get information out. So we created the Budweiser. You might not have heard of the Budweiser before, but it's laminated now, because it was originally just a photocopy that we would give to people, but we would laminate them and sell them for $1 as rolling trays. So that's how we advertised them, was $1 for a rolling tray, which is a great way to get the information out there and keep it more permanent. But we would put out any number of things, like there's a list of upcoming events, announcements, some art, quotes from books, a thing about knowing your rights from officers, just different contact information, nothing like the newspaper that we have now, but certainly it was the precursor to that, when it, and really helped us get information out about all the different events that we were doing. And I thought I'd share one of the crazy early events, because I've done so many things here in Victoria and stuff, it's hard to keep track. I tried to do the numbers a few years ago. I think I'm somewhere between 26 and 2,700 meetings, rallies, or cannabis events that I've organized here. It's pretty neat. So one of my favorite stories is the 5th anniversary of Hempology 101. Again, this was like really early, so this was 2000, September 2000. And Hempology at that point, we had meetings downtown, we had them in the library. This is again every Wednesday night at 7. Did them all over the place, and generally speaking at that time would get between 70 and 100, depending on the night and the weather and a few other factors. But a nice sized group, enough that we felt big enough that we could have a public presence. We kept fairly quiet, but it's our 5th anniversary. Hempology's here, so I planned the biggest day of my career at that point, which was actually starting at 420 in Beacon Hill Park, and we smoked pot there for a while, and then the plan was to march to the Parliaments, then march to City Hall, and then back to the park by 7 o'clock, which is when we normally started, and that's when the cookies were going to arrive from the kitchen. And we were gonna, normally, actually, I was crazy enough back then, before I got busted for cookies, I would sell them at Hempology's Wednesday nights. I'd show up with like a fucking backpack full of cookies and just make everybody stand in a line and sell them as fast as I possibly could till they were gone. and did that almost every week. So that was pretty popular. So that, and then we were playing a game of capture the flag in Beacon Hill Park that night. So it was like, here's a whole day of like, come have fun with Hempology, right? It was wicked. So we got to the ledge, and Betty Krawchuk, I believe is how you say her name, was protesting on the front lawn of the ledge. She had a little tent there. She's a elderly lady fighting for the trees. She's still alive, you know, bless her dear heart. But she was literally camped out on the front lawn until Gordon Campbell or somebody else came out, and I don't even think it was Campbell then. But anyway, she was, yeah, it was a long time ago, but she was camped there until somebody came out to talk to her, and was getting a fair amount of media attention, been there for a little while. So we arrived, and I gave her a chance to speak about what she was doing. You know, as I said, I believe very much in protecting the trees. I wanted her to speak about what she was doing, but instead she gave this incredible rant about the war on drugs. And it was just awesome because it was, you know, she's a very well-dressed, very presentable lady here. We were at the ledge. You know, there was a bunch of us chronic, like, you know, just crazy kids puffing down, and all these tourists, like, whoa. So hung out with Betty for a bit, went to City Hall. Now, not planned at all, the Crime Stoppers, International Crime Stoppers Association was having their like 23rd annual global conference. There were 700 of the top police officers from around the world having a midweek convention at the Empress, which is private property, right? Can't protest it. This was back in the day that the the battle in Seattle was going on, and all these like crazy big protests were happening. The Apex Summit had happened at UBC, where a whole bunch of people got pepper sprayed and stuff, and so it was like very tense climate for protesting. And this was the kind of event that would get protested at if the opportunity arose. So they were doing everything they could to make sure that didn't happen. But I kind of snuck in and went the night before, and just went into the Empress and just kind of asked some innocent questions, and found out that actually they were having their social the next night at the museum, which happens to be public property. So we decided that we would include that in our march between City Hall and the park. And apparently their supper started at 7, and that's when the cookies arrived in the park. So it was like, we got there at about 6:30, which was when all their guests were arriving. And so it was this total ragtag group that arrived, and I will never forget the security. They were priceless. There were two of them, a tall guy and a fat guy, for lack of a better term. But anyway, they were completely blown away that there was this protest there. And it was completely disorganized in that they didn't know what it was. Back then, we didn't even have any signs. We didn't have like honk for hemp, nothing. It was just a bunch of chronics, right? Like no real visible protest. It's just the pot session all of a sudden happening at the museum. So they kind of came out and looked around for a minute, didn't know what to do. I came over, introduced myself, and they're like, this is private property, or this is public property, you're not allowed to be here. And they said that twice, and I'm like, but you just said it's public property, we're allowed to be here. And they're like, okay, yeah, you're allowed to be here, but we don't want you here. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. They're like, and then they tried calling the police. Oh no, that's right. We were getting a police escort already until like just before we got to the museum. Betty got arrested on the front steps of the ledge, and the police got called away from us, and every police officer in Victoria was arresting this grandma at the ledge. And these two security guards were like calling for the police, and they couldn't get anybody to come, even though it's like, 500 feet? They couldn't get a single cop to walk over to deal with us at the museum. So like, they were just like, telling me like, the cops are coming. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. We just want to see what's going on. It's the Crime Stoppers event, right? And they're like, no. Meanwhile, police were walking by like holding their hand over the badges so people couldn't read their name tags. But others were, and they're like, oh no, this guy's a cop tag. No, this guy's a cop. Yeah, these guys are cops. Like, so the guy, okay, yeah, this is it, right? So they're like, trying to shoot me out. And I'm like, you know what? We got an event in the park. We just kind of came here to smoke a little bit of pot in your face. We're not staying for too long. Don't worry about it. And so then I get on the microphone, And I'm like, just let me get on the mic and so I can tell everybody, right? They can't all hear me right now. I got to get up and speak, right? So get up on the microphone. Welcome everybody to the 5th anniversary of Hempology 101. Just got the crowd totally worked up, and they just were like, oh no, and just like walked back inside and left me totally to myself, which is wrong. And then I did this little spiel.
How many of your sort of chronic team were there at that point?
There's about 100 of us. Maybe 120.
So you outnumbered them.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was like a big crowd, and not a very unruly crowd. Like a lot of young street kind of entrenched people that just weren't going to give a shit what anybody said. So like, not your average group of students coming down. It was a pretty hardcore group. And so so the best part was though, I'm giving the spiel. All of a sudden, the TV camera from CH showed up. And they had just walked through the crowd with the camera down low. And all of a sudden, bam, I'm on the news. So I went into my little spiel, Hempology 101, want to legalize pot. And I was wanting to say something about Crime Stoppers. And when I do interviews and speak quite often, even now, it's like I have this little voice in the back of my head critiquing what I'm doing, kind of lining up what I'm going to say next or whatever. And so I'm doing this talk, big rally, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, what's the punchline, Ted? What's the punchline on the news? And it just came out. I'm like, we think Crime Stoppers are scum. And there's this dead silence. Like everybody was just, whoa. And then this huge, yeah! And it was Crime Stoppers. Yeah, it was Crime Stoppers, yeah. And so, this huge cheer erupted, and it was fantastic. The next day on the news, the two big things, even that evening news, were Betty Krawchuk getting arrested, and potheads called Crime Stoppers scum. It was really a really amazing moment. But the ironic moment was later that night we went to play Capture the Flag in Beacon Hill, right? And I don't know if you guys know the park very well, but at the back corner there's a little place where they got something, I think it's the Queen's Pond or whatever, a bunch of little ponds, and I was reaching around a building for the flag and took the wrong step and ended up into here and duck scum. Yeah. And I remember standing there, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and thinking, who's the scum now, right? So that was one of my funner stories of Hempology and some of the antics that we've got up to. But we've done a lot of different things downtown. I've had my game show now. This is the 9th year we've played Reach for the Pot. And so we've had a lot of fun playing the game all over town as well. And that's been a great addition. Unfortunately, the Wednesday night meetings ended with drunk kids just intentionally ruining it. So after 12 years of having Wednesday night meetings, I had to pull the plug. It was just getting far too much trouble for what it was worth. And at the same time, the club here at the university was really starting to take off and gel, and was very rewarding without much of a headache at all. And so it was quite easy for me to stop doing it every Wednesday night and focus on the university. Though we have kept a certain number of Hempology meetings in the downtown together, although there seems to be less every year. It's not as active as it used to be. It's kind of hard to keep up with all the different things that I used to do. But part of what's happened is I've taken my successes from Victoria and what I've learned, and I'm trying now to expand and have other places doing Hempology in various ways. So there's been a bit of a transition through the internet and now with the publishing of Hempology. And so that's the history part. I guess I'll take a few minutes here to go over last year, because last year was an incredible year on many levels. I guess after 420, after the last lecture I did anyway, we had our best ever 420 at City Hall, probably 17 or 1,800 people. It's a good way to kind of, keep the momentum going. And then a couple of weeks after that, I guess indirectly related, I had the Canada Revenue Agency come after me for unpaid taxes. I guess even now that I think about it, since the last lecture a year ago, we had the court decision come down with Owen ruling the MMAR unconstitutional for not allowing extracts. So that brought the Canada Revenue Agency after me, which meant that we created a nonprofit for the Buyers Club, and I've sold it now. Actually, it's 6 months now. It's been a nonprofit society, kind of separate, and we've sort of divorced Hempology. And in a way, it's allowed me to focus a lot more on Hempology work. So it's been, in a lot of ways, a great thing, because right when the CRA came in, I think I just like the day before sent my book off to get printed. It was ready. It's like, let's go get it printed. There was no more to do but pick it up and start selling it. And so it was a opportunity to sort of divorce the two groups and make a run with Hempology 101. And so we printed 2,600 books out. Very lucky to be able to borrow the money from Gail and her inheritance that has helped the book come to life. And also got very lucky with the good graphic designer who put the image and the package together. It was one thing to get the writing done, but to actually have it look this presentable and academic was something that Sarita did an excellent job for. And in general, I had a really good team putting it together, and it's been a long time coming, but yeah, it's finally out, and it's slowly starting to sell more. I sold another one on Amazon today and one earlier this week. So I originally thought that I'd sell the first 2,600 in months, and that we'd have to order more, and I'd be able to hire staff, and we'd have a great thing going. I'd be on a bestsellers list and stuff. That hasn't happened for a few reasons, partly because I'm not a very focused guy. I've got a lot of projects on the go, and it just seems like I've got this one up and going, and then I started touring around Canada. Because as you saw, my goal is to try to get clubs going in as many places as possible. And I couldn't even wait till my book was out, honestly. We got clubs going at UBC a couple years ago, at Vancouver Island University, then I guess Mount Allison University started up a year ago, so they've been up and running for a while now. So I did some work with some other clubs, but certainly now that the book's out, I'm trying to get across Canada as much as I can and get clubs going at other universities. So we went to Ontario last summer, almost as soon as the book was out, and then we drove to northern Saskatchewan and back last summer, which was an incredible journey. We went to a hemp farm. I talked a bit about it before, but we went to I think it was about a 40-acre hemp farm in northern Saskatchewan. We got to juice hemp plants. We got to make a extraction, like our massage oil, out of it as well. And it was really exciting times, and so much more to come from that as well. I will never have time to talk about it all. But certainly, we also made a big trip this November when we went out all the way to Nova Scotia and had 4 cannabis conventions, one at Dalhousie University, one at Mount Allison in New Brunswick, one in Ottawa, and one at the University of Toronto. And so, yeah, we did 4 conventions in 2 weeks. It was intense because I hadn't even been in some of these cities before. I haven't been in Ottawa in like a couple decades, so it was like almost all new turf, very few local connections. We had a good crew at the University in New Brunswick and Mount Allison, but everywhere else we were really starting from scratch, and you could tell by the attendance and things, but we laid some good roots to the point where now we have a club starting at Dalhousie in September. That's kind of in the works. We have a club now at the University of Ottawa, and we have some interest at the University of PEI, where next year we actually plan on going back and flying all the way to Newfoundland, having a convention in Newfoundland, and then getting over to PEI and hitting up all of the eastern provinces and doing a 3-week tour. But that's next year. This year we did 4 conventions in 2 weeks, which was intense, but we did it. And then just recently we did our convention here at UVic, and just this weekend we did our UBC convention, which makes it 6 cannabis conventions that we've done this year, twice as many as last year, which is when we did 3. And so you know, we've really expanded quite a bit. If we keep doubling the number of clubs and the number of conventions we do, which is what I predict and think we might do, because I've already lined up, I think, 12 conventions for next year that I hope to do. So yeah, the conventions and clubs are really starting to take off finally, which is very exciting for us. I guess it's almost more on a personal note too, but I can't help but mention the movie that I got filmed in last year. I'm hoping and praying that the final cut of Kid Cannabis will have us in it. but Hollywood movie was essentially filmed in part, and so you know, there was an article in one of the newspapers, the Digest, but you know, again, until I know I've made the final cut and it's out there, it's not real. But that'll have a huge impact on Hempology. Again, you know, kind of, no, I haven't heard anything. I haven't got an answer back from any of them. It's kind of frustrating. But there's every reason to think that it will make the cut. But just it was a really interesting surprise. I guess I haven't mentioned it yet, but the Hempology, after the Buyers Club got raided in 2002, 2003, we didn't have the newsletter, the Budweiser, going anymore. When I first got the store, I kind of got a little swamped, so I kind of let the Hempology newsletter die. But then we had a meeting, and Gail came to it and was adamant that we needed newsletter to help inform our membership about what was happening in court and in politics and otherwise. So we started up. I didn't bring one, but the first one was really like, you know, a photocopy. Wasn't much more than just like one page folded together. So it was very low budget, but it was very effective. It got a little bit bigger after a few issues, but what kicked it into the newspaper was partly back in 2009, our bakery got raided, so we had a new trial that we wanted to educate our members and the public about as well. It became clear that we needed to help inform the general public about what was going on, not just our own membership. But also Cannabis Culture magazine stopped printing, and there wasn't a publication that had a real focus on what was happening in Canada. And even that one was verging more on international over time, but we wanted to focus on Canada, and so now we've got it 10,000 copies we print of this and send it around Canada to dispensaries and head shops and stuff, and there's still a lot of potential. We'd certainly love to print more, have it a little bit bigger and print it more often, but we just don't have the advertising money coming in yet. But that's partly because I'm not very good at selling my stuff. I'm pretty good at putting it out there, but I don't really like money very much, so I'm not really good at trying to bug people for it. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we can turn it into something that will at least pay for itself, but it's been greatly subsidized by the Cannabis Buyers Club, which is really one of the main beneficiaries of having it out there. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it would be nice to having it paying for itself. I guess one of the other things that's going on, last year, right at the end of the school year, we had a referendum, and we're about to reclaim the square. I'm sure most of you know that last year, at the beginning of the school year in September, the administration had just created this new smoking policy, which states that students cannot smoke in the what's called this ring road, inside the ring road. However, policy 9, or section 9 in here, states that exceptions to the restrictions in this policy may be granted for traditional and ceremonial events at approved times and places. So it says granted and approved. And so after we got the, last year after we were kicked out, I wanted to get permission. It wasn't enough for us to just fight for our right to have 420 at the center of campus. We needed the authority of the student body, I figured, to do that, to prove that it was in fact a traditional ceremony of the school, not just our club's traditional ceremony, but the student body. So we did that. We had a referendum, and the results were pretty close. We had 1,731 yes, 1,602 no. So it was pretty damn close. It was like 54% or something, I recall. But we won. So we have a mandate from the student body. However, the administration has ignored the referendum and the requests of the UVSS to move the 420 back to the center of campus. And so we've waited respectfully for a year for the due process to occur. That hasn't happened, and so today we're here to take it back.
Even if you send an email telling it, like, we haven't gotten a response yet, and they didn't respond to it.
Yeah, they haven't responded to anything. And it's not just us they haven't responded to. The UVSS board, this vote last year was for the UVSS board of directors to approach the administration for us to get an official exemption. So So they've ignored the student body and the UVSS. They haven't just ignored our club. They've ignored the wishes of the students. It's a traditional ceremony. It's not for the university administration to decide what is a tradition or what is a ceremony. That is up for the individuals to decide, and so we are here to claim that right. So thanks everybody for coming. And I should finish noting that last year was an incredible year for me on a personal level, and this year, earlier in the year, MedPot Forums held a vote that people on these forums are mostly patients in Canada. It's one of the most active forums in Canada, probably one of the more active in the world, really, when it comes to activism. And so they nominated a number of different people, and I made the list, and eventually won the Michelle Rainey Award. It's named after a very dear friend, Michelle, who passed away from cancer. Thank you. It's an honor being the #1 activist in Canada. I'd prefer to have a couple others that I was following, though, honestly. But nevertheless, it's a great honor to be the first winner of this award. And I'd just like to thank everybody for supporting me and helping me get to this position. And we've got a bright future ahead of us. Thanks everybody for coming out. Have a great day. It's smoking with the
Well deserved.